Okay, we'll start out in Illustrator, just looking briefly at Live Trace. I know a few of you have had questions about that. And so for the drawings that you've been doing on the kitchen objects, as well as future sketches, diagrams, those sorts of things, Live Trace, or in the current version of Illustrator, it's called Image Trace, are really good tools to help you bring those in and process those. They may not always be the right way to go. You don't always have to bring every hand drawing in through making it an image trace, but it is a good tool to know about. So I'm going to start out with a sketch, just a hand sketch. So I'm going to place just a sketch here, and it's been scanned. Oops, sorry. It's been scanned and just brought into through Photoshop. I cleaned it up a little bit, but it's basically still all of the line work from the drawing. Let me zoom in and change the resolution a little bit so you see what we're looking at here. It used to be called Live Trace. It's now called Image Trace. So depending on which version of Illustrator you're working in. And so this was drawn with pen. If you're working in pencil, you need to go in and adjust the levels in Photoshop so that you have more black and white to work with, or at least I would recommend doing that. You can bring in anything. You can bring in photographs, whatever it might be. So once you have your image placed, you can just grab something from the internet if you don't have any drawings or images to bring in, or you can just watch. And when the image is selected up here under Image Trace, it has a series of defaults. So it'll look at images, full color images, and translate those into high fidelity photo, low fidelity photo, which turns the regions of color into editable regions so that you can bring it in and recolor it or edit the image as a raster image rather than a vector image in Photoshop. Yes?
Would you first go through Photoshop and try and eliminate the glaze before doing image trace, or would you just bring it straight into image trace?
It depends on what the image is and what you want to do with it. So it's specific. So I'll show you specifically for this sketch, and then you can play around with it, and we can, if you have a specific image that you have questions about. So it has a series of defaults that you can click on. So if I were to take this original sketch and choose the default of sketched art, that might be a good way to get going. And then I can open up the qualities, or the properties. So when I run it through that default, it translates the image into, or the sketch into a series of kind of fields, but it doesn't do it in a very true way to the original image. So I want to go into the Image Trace panel, which is here, and you can bring it up, and it'll be over on the side as well. If it's not in, if you can't find it up here at the top under Window, you can go to Image Trace, and if it's not checked, check it, and it'll appear. You can dock it over onto the side in your layers or something along those lines. So for the sake of seeing it up on the screen, I'm going to just zoom into a particular region. So I've lost all of the lines in this area. These don't really make sense anymore. Not that my writing was ever really legible, but you can't really read what this says. So I'm going to go in and start fine-tuning some of these presets. In the panel here, is everybody following? Anybody have any questions? Everybody okay? So in this panel over here, you can choose what you're seeing in Illustrator, right? So right now we're just looking at the tracing results. It's not showing us the original sketch anymore. You can show the tracing results with outlines, so it will outline the different fields of color. You can show just the outlines. You can show outlines and the image behind it, so you can see what was originally drawn and what is not. And you can also show just the source image, so it goes back to the non-image traced version. Typically, you want to be showing just the tracing results. Below that, you have a series of options. If you're not seeing all of the options, just click on the arrow to the left of Advanced, and it'll show you the rest of these in here. In here, you can start to play around with some of the different sliders. You have down here at the bottom that you can't see on mine, so I'm not going to, oh, there we go. Down here on the bottom, you have a box that says Preview. If it's checked, it means that it's going to automatically recalculate everything for the image every time you make an adjustment, which depending on the size of your image could start taking a long time. So you might want to turn that off once you know what you're doing so that you can make a few adjustments, turn it back on, see what the results are, and then so on and so forth. I'll leave it on for now. So it has a really nice kind of series of pop-ups that if you hover over the sliders under threshold, corners, noise, those sorts of things, it'll tell you what happens when you move the slider one way or the other. So pixels darker than the threshold value are converted to black. So if you increase the threshold, it's going to let more things that were less black be converted to black, right? So I've got way more lines than I did before. So making that adjustment is helping me. And that's because my original drawing wasn't purely black and white, and that it also it had thinner and thicker lines in it. So where it makes sense, and when you go beyond that, it turns everything to black, or you can just start making some changes. The next thing that I want to do, just so that I'm seeing what I want at the end of the day, is I want these things to be lines and not fills. So I'm going to make sure that strokes are selected and fills are not. You may want fills on depending on what it is that you're working on, but for the intents and purposes of this, I don't want any infill, I just want the lines themselves.
What will that do if you have fills selected?
It'll take the regions, like these areas. So it's a little hard to see because it still looks like a raster image, but it would take this as a region and create a microscopically thin outline and fill it in with black rather than have the line itself be the thing that makes the color. So it gets harder to edit afterwards. The paths, so higher value means tighter fit, so the higher the path number is, the more closely it's going to correspond to your original drawing. The noise, having less of this allows for more noise, which sometimes may be a good thing, sometimes may be a bad thing. In this case, it's going to let me have more of the detail in the drawing. The stroke is the maximum width that will be recognized and converted into stroke. So, depending on how thin or thick the lines were in your original drawing, you'll want to adjust this so that it's showing you what you want to be seeing. And the rest of this, you can choose to ignore the whites if you want, but for now, we've kind of gotten to the point where this is what I want to see. The last thing, I didn't mention this, you can choose whether you want to be working in color, in grayscale, or black and white. And after, like if I were to switch this into color, obviously my lines are still black, so it's not really going to change much, but you'll see that you can choose to have something, just have a certain number of colors in it, so I could set it to have, 6 colors, and it's going to pick the 6 most dominant colors, and then it's going to let me adjust those in different ways. So I'm going to switch this back to black and white, because that's what I need. Okay, so once I'm done with all of that, I'm going to hide my palettes here, and I still can't do anything with this. It looks better on the screen, and I know that hidden in here, or embedded in here is all the vector information that I want, but it's not going to turn it into actual lines that I can control until I go to expand. And now each of these things is an individual editable line. I have to ungroup first, so Control-Shift-G, and now I should be able to edit these things. Oh, I didn't turn off my fills, sorry. So this is what happens when you don't use the strokes.
Where was the expand button?
Yeah.
It's up here at the top, when you're back in, it's not in the panel, it's up here at the top. You can also go under Object, Live Trace, or Image Trace and expand.
Is the expand that's on the rather than the object, is that a different expand?
Is the expand what?
One off of the object window again, from the top object menu, sorry. Right there where it says expand.
Yeah, that's what I just said.
No, the other, there's another one right there.
I guess they're the same thing. Yeah, I don't know. So in here, I want to make sure that I'm on black and white. And, yep, I need to turn off fills and turn on strokes. That was what switched, when I went into color, it switched it back. And then I'm just going to click trace, and that's going to update it for me, or I can turn preview back on and it'll update it. And then when I'm in here, I can now hit expand, and you can see there are a series of line segments. If I ungroup them, I can go in and select them individually. So I can take everything and make the stroke lighter or heavier. I can use it as a live paint group, and fill it with a color. Right, I can go into particular regions and fill. I'm always looking at the bucket and not the arrow. Right, so it lets you start editing a hand drawing in a way that you can really control the lines for printing. So we've seen a lot of the hand drawings out there, and this will be one of the ways, we've been critiquing the kind of fuzziness of the line. None of these lines are straight, but at least they're all one-point lines, so they're all consistently thick. So that's one way that you can go in and start cleaning things up. Any questions on that?
That's really cool.
It's really cool. And I would play around with it a little bit, play around with it with an image that has color in it, and look at what happens when you do something with 4 tones or 6 tones. It starts to give you some really interesting results. And there's also, in the Illustrator handout that I gave you, the PDF, there's a step-by-step on going through making a live trace using the same sketch, just because it's what I had on my computer. So if you're not remembering how to do something, you can go through the handout. Okay. Were there other questions in Illustrator before we move into Rhino and Photoshop? No? Everybody's doing okay?
How do you slice something? Like, how do you disconnect the path? Or if you have like a whole picture?
How do you disconnect a path?
Yeah.
You can use the cutting tool. Where is it over here? Oh, down here, the knife tool. And you can, no, sorry, not that.
Yeah, because I tried with that one.
Yeah, where's the cut tool? It's the scissors. It's C is the shortcut. But where is it? Oh, it's hidden here under the eraser.
Oh,
The scissors tool, sorry, not that.
yeah.
Please use the scissors tool on a segment or an anchor point, but not the end point of a path. Okay. So you should be able to... so if you just slice it there, oops, ungroup. Oh, sorry. So it joins everything together for live paint. So I'm just going to undo back to the non-live painted area. Oops. So with my cut tool, I can go in and just click a point along the path and it'll split it at that point. Right? So if I want to split it here, I just click, and now this is in 2 segments.
Oh, okay.
Okay? Mm-hmm. Any other Illustrator questions? Okay. All right. Let me just pause this.